So our next speaker is an expert on the issue of reserves. We have Raymond Michels, Head of Carbon Resources from CNRS. Raymond, please.
Thank you. Yeah, we talked about the potential reserves of shale gas in Europe. It was said that we had about 80% of comparatively to US reserves. Now I'm always puzzled when I see that the Americans are calculating our reserves in Europe. They are based on actually what we know about shales in Europe, and at best we have knowledge on some of basins which have been intensely drilled for conventional oil and gas in the past. Yet in conventional exploration, companies do not drill shales. They drill to find traps which are less deep than the shale itself. So even in those well-developed petroleum systems, those well-developed petroleum fields, there is not always enough knowledge to have an exact estimation of how much gas is there. The best way to know is actually to drill and do fracturing to make the initial measurements and see how much is there. Then we have basins in which we have guess about how much is there, but exploration dates 30 years back. So there are new drilling, exploration drilling is needed to know at least how much shale is there and how much gas it may contain. And then we have basins which are totally unexplored because they have never been thought in terms of petroleum content or gas content, rather coal content. So that means actually that if we wish to have a better idea of how much shale gas we have in Europe, we have to restart exploration of the geological underground of Europe. And that actually goes to other problems we may talk about later. I just talked about the potential reserves. That says that as a geologist, when I know where the approximative shale is located, when I can calculate its approximative volume and depth and geological history, I can give you a figure on how much oil and gas you might expect to find in this shale. Now the real issue is how much gas is actually there. And this is very dependent on the technology you're using. This is actually what we might call recoverable resource. Hydraulic fracturation, horizontal drilling have been known for decades and used in conventional settings. Now it is used at huge scale to investigate shale. So in Europe, we have not yet drilled enough the shale to know exactly what it is, and we have not applied at all the horizontal drilling and fracturation as to try to measure how much gas you might recover. So as long as this has not been done on some, I would say, exploration wells, it's difficult to say actually how much gas is there. When it comes to the drilling and fracturing itself, we're also lacking on knowledge, and this is general in the States or in Europe. We're lacking knowledge on actually what the physical properties of those shales are. So there's lots of research we have to do as to optimize the fracking itself. Type of fluids which are currently used can be improved. We can also improve our way of tracking with geophysics how the fracking is going on and how to control it. We have to improve the mechanics of the understanding of the mechanics of the shale and so on. So there are lots of research that has also to be done in the understanding of the geological properties of the shale in relationship to how we actually act on it. Then, of course, are all the questions that are raised concerning environmental, the water use that people mentions, the earthquakes that we can potentially trigger. These are all many questions we have to do research on. And talking about the earthquake, it brings the question to much more global perspective. Shale gas is actually questioning our capacity to explore and exploit deep underground resources, not only fossil fuels, it's also thermal energy, because in Europe the biggest induced earthquake we had is actually in relationship to hydrothermal recovery in Switzerland. So also we have the challenge of the carbon dioxide injection into the underground. And my feeling is all these problems are linked. It's not only the problem of should we do hydrofracturation or not for the gas shale, is what are capacities to investigate the underground and actually have profit of what is there. We should not also forget that we are lacking basic resources, basic metal resources. We are also lacking strategic metals for the cellular phones, for instance, or the electronics. So again, I mean, to me, there is a general thinking we have to develop on what is going to be the 21st century exploration of the deep underground of Europe.
Okay. Good. Thank you very much, Mr. Michels, and thank you for being very brief and yet stimulating. Before I throw the discussion open to the floor, I just want to ask some of the panellists to come back on some of these other points. And Peter, this question of accurate assessment of EU reserves, this 80% figure, do you agree that, as many of the other speakers have said, about the degree of uncertainty and the need to start drilling before establishing a realistic picture?
Yeah, absolutely. It's highly uncertain. I mean, it's the best estimate that's available. And you're right, it is strange that it comes from the US has to measure it as opposed to somebody in Europe actually having an assessment of it. But we simply don't have anything like enough data to come up with a really accurate number at the moment. But what we have got is a number. The best estimate is good, and as you go and drill, we may find that it's a bigger number. We may also find it's a smaller number. We just don't know.
Okay, but as you were saying, it's difficult to construct a business case on such uncertainty.
It's difficult for businesses to go out and invest in finding out whether or not this is going to be an investable business case, which is sort of the situation at the moment.
Mr. Mies, we've just come back to you on Mr. Brezina's point about subsidiarity. I'm sure the Commission is ever mindful of respect for subsidiarity. So how do you...
sacrosanct principle.
So how are you taking this on board?
Well, this is, as I said, I mean, it's up to the member states to define their energy mix, but they have to exploit it. When they exploit it, they have to do that in due respect of the existing environmental and other legislation. And we have to make sure also that the divergence of applications does not lead to a fragmented single market. And so these are important points. Two things that I would like to add in order to dispel any possible misunderstanding. What the Commission is endeavoring is to enable the exploitation and exploration of shale gas. We are looking at an enabling framework. And the second point I forgot to mention is the cost of the measures that, for instance, the EIA, the Golden Rules. These are 7% of a typical well, and it's 1.4% of the potential yearly revenue of. So it's the measures that would need to be taken, if whether they are voluntary measures or this is irrelevant, are a small proportion of the overall revenue. And we need to address the public acceptance issue. Otherwise, shale gas is going to become the next GMO in Europe. Huh? So basically, if we do not confront this problem, and if we do not, if we are not able to reassure the public that proper environmental and climate safeguards are in place, then we're in for the glory, as we say.
Okay. Mr. Murzin, do you want to come back?
All these regulations cost money. That's truth. And you are talking about profits, but who knows if any profit from such geological survey and drilling is, and you are investing a lot of money. The well costs $10 million usually, sometimes more, and it is. And by the way, these measures cost time, and it is sometimes even more important than money. So nobody is against rules and tough rules, but we have a lot of them. For chemicals, we have a REACH. We have a new idea of EIA study for European rules. Just now we have a national one, and from my point of view, it is more than enough. But if you don't think that it is too ambitious to have united rules for such studies.
So, you come back quickly and then we'll take some questions from the floor.
No, I think it's not necessarily strict rules. It's general principles that need to be implemented. So basically, making sure that, for instance, there is proper underground characterization and baseline monitoring. You spoke about REACH as a means. I mean, people want to know the chemicals that are injected near their house in the potentially polluting, yes, if at all, the groundwater that they use. REACH provides information on a very generic level and not as on a site-specific, in a site-specific manner. And so there is a need or a call from local population and a commitment from industry to disclose chemicals. So this is, REACH is not enough, I would say, in that sense. Otherwise there would not be a need to disclose chemicals locally. So we can have a set of fairly agreeable principles, and the ones that have been outlined by the EIA seem to be fairly generally accepted.
Okay, let's open the floor. So Tiago, you have a microphone. Okay. The lady on the end here, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Lena Kolarska-Bobińska. I am from Poland and from European Parliament, from the ITRE committee. I represent also a region where actually shale gas is. In Poland there are 2 regions where it is, and Poland is only one of the 4 or 5 countries in Europe where it is. So I want to tell you a little bit about public support, because it has been mentioned here, population, society, public, etc. I'm doing in this region where actually the drills are being done, a public opinion research every year to see if people are afraid, to what extent they are afraid, of what type of energy sources they are afraid, etc. So I can tell you that in Poland as a general, there is a 70% support for shale gas. In this region, it's much higher. And then we ask them not generally what in your voyage, what ship is there, but also we are asking how about back of your door? And I can tell you that it's around 70%. We can say that people don't know exactly, but this is as one voivodeship. There are different reasons why people support that. But let's talk about facts, how much people will support. The problem I have is that shale gas is a part of a possible part of energy mix in only very few countries in Europe. The regulations and the, I would say, dislikeness or even hate type of attitude is in those countries which don't have shale gas, will never have shale gas. And they are influencing directly our energy mix and our choices. What is going on right now, in my opinion, is that the Commission is regulating something which we don't know if it really exists. Because we are right now talking only about potential of shale gas in our countries. We still really don't know. But we are already regulating that. And the problem is right now with the recent changes of impact assessment is that it will probably lead to stop of a research. Because as you said yourself, we have to make a lot of drills in order to find if there is shale gas at all. So the impact assessment, which was before used for industrial excavation, is right now will be applied to a research type of drilling. It will be so costly, so long and so bureaucratic that many companies will simply and already are withdrawing from Poland because of the burden, and we will never be able to find out if we have shale gas or not. So we have to be sincere, or we treat that as a possibility or not. Thank you.
You don't have a question. Mr. Mears, do you want to come back, I mean, maybe specifically on the Zanoni report and how it's viewed in the Commission?
I mean, this is being discussed currently in the trilogue. There are technical meetings. We will see what the positions will be. This is not.
But the Commission has a view. The Commission had its original proposal.
Has not yet determined its position as regards the Zanoni amendment.
No discussion. Okay.
Sorry, speaking about this amendment is about any hydraulic fracking, any. So in a small amounts currently used for decades, and it is something what is not acceptable from healthy reason. But
and to address a specific question, this idea that research efforts might be nipped in the bud, are you taking that? How are you taking that into account?
Again, what we need to agree on. I mean, we are not regulating. Again, this is still an open question. We have options on the table, and it will be up to the college to decide which course of action. But as regard the sorry, I lost my.
On whether you're killing research efforts before.
Oh no, I mean the exploration is ongoing. We are not. Again, it needs to be done in a way which is acceptable to the population and which we respect the environmental legislation. That's all. If we have no objection whatsoever to exploration, I think in the exploration we have to distinguish maybe different phases in the exploration. The main concern, I mean, when you first drill, vertical drilling, and take your carottage, your sampling, this is a very common type of operation and does not give rise to any potential concern. The problem starts to arise when you have high volume hydraulic fracturing being used, because that is typically the reason in the UK when you had the small tremor, which has led to stopping the exploration for over a year. So again, you know, one needs to distinguish different phases in the exploration and not necessarily have a blanket type of approach. to this stage of the process.
Okay, I think the gentleman in the front row here, and then we had one at the back.
Yes, hi. Nicola, no hot air. I really must take Peter Lambert to task. I've been looking at shale gas for over 6 years, and one thing I understand is that anything over 45 days is ancient history and out of date. Let's take the example that you're saying is that it's going to be 50
Can I just be sure that you can ask a question?
Well, no, I'm going to answer a question. Is just to point out that in Pennsylvania there wasn't any shale gas wells at all until 2004, none, only 20 by 2008, and now there's 80 BCM per year. Why, as Europeans, and I'm an Anglo-American, so I'm a bit confused, especially one who'd really rather live in Italy, why do we look to create problems? Why do we hug problems instead of actually solving things as Nikki Savella does?
I think you'll need a psychologist to answer the question about why Europeans look to create problems. Let me just to comment on the substantive point I think you made. It's funny, I mentioned I gave this speech at the Scottish Oil Club last week on a similar topic, and we got taken to task by environmentalists last week for being far too pro shale gas, to the point where somebody interrupted the speech and they poured a bucket of goo over their heads and told us about how terrible shale gas was for the environment. So maybe we're getting a reasonable balance if you're challenging that we're not supportive enough of shale gas. All I'm trying to do is to state our view of how the world is going at the moment. Personally, as somebody who has worked for a long time in the oil and gas industry, I would love if shale gas was developing at a faster rate in Europe. And I really think the challenge for the people in the room, the people in the industry in Europe, is to find ways for that to happen faster. I'm just giving my view of how I think it will develop on the way we're going at the moment. And I'm not creating the barriers, I'm just describing the ones that I see appearing.
We've had some, I'll take that in a second, we had some questions sent in via the CommentVisions website, which I'm keen to feature. We have one from Philippe Dumas from the European Geothermal Energy Council. And he says, is there a case for limiting shale gas production to areas where there's no conflict with drinking water and other uses? Who'd like to answer? Who'd like to try that one?
From what we know from the United States is that actually it leaks into aquifers that contain drinkable waters as actually due to failures in the casing of the wells. There are thousands of wells that were drilled in the past that go through drinkable water resources, and there was no contamination because the casing was okay. So they are obviously in the American case there were failures, but the casing of wells it's the basics of the petroleum people's job. If you take care about the integrity of the casing, there will be no contamination of drinking waters. I mean, the Paris Basin has been drilled for decades. Nobody ever complained about contamination of the water that it is actually used by Paris. The city is using that water. So again, I mean, if the casing of the well is properly done, there is no danger.
Good. We had a question at the back. Can I have a microphone close by?
My name's Laurel Henning. I'm from MLEX. It's a question to do with emission reductions, if I may just turn away from energy. US has seen quite significant emission reductions that it's attributed to shale gas. And with UN negotiators talking about delegates having to step up their efforts for emission reductions, I was just wondering whether in the foreseeable future, probably not before 2020, that was possible in the EU, or is this an energy resource and not something that we're going to see for emission reductions in Europe? Thank you.
Emission reduction from shale gas. Well, if shale gas is exploited and replaces coal, this will be a benefit. But we have to make sure that this is done again according to the rules. We need to prevent fugitive emissions and these fugitive emissions may be significant. We need to see, and there are currently no rules applicable to that, apart from the effort sharing decision, how we deal with the venting and the flaring of fugitive emissions. I mean, there's been a study carried out by a colleague that I see in the room from DG Climat, trying to assess what would be the climate benefits from shale gas. And if shale is properly exploited, then it would be slightly more polluting than conventional gas, but less polluting from imported gas. So, in as much as these fugitive emissions and all the rules are applied. But all in all, we should not overestimate either the economic or climate benefits that we might accrue from shale gas exploitation. Shale gas, at best, will compensate for, well, it's country specific. So in certain countries it may represent a lot. But for Europe as a whole, it will just compensate for the decline of conventional gas. So it is still important, it is still essential to maintain our energy security at a certain level, but it will ultimately, in 2040, it will represent maybe 3% of our energy consumption. Shale gas might represent 10% in the best case scenario of the gas that we use, and gas would represent 30% of our global energy mix in the EU. So 3%. Huh? So is that going to change dramatically the price of gas? Is that going to change dramatically the competitiveness of our industry? It is, let's not be mistaken, it is an important component. We should not overlook the contribution that it can bring, but we should again take a pinch of salt when we argue that it is going to be the solution to our economic and climate problems.
As for this CO2 footprint for shale gas, it's funny reading because you can collect 5 studies in favor of high fugitive methane and 5 studies denying it. But I recommend visit on some natural gas fields to the east, so very far. It is possible to compare practically, but and again, in the case of Poland, it is necessary to say that partly using of shale gas,
it's essential
in front of coal is.
If it effectively substitutes for coal, that would be a benefit, a real benefit.
Peter, I just wanted to get your views on this issue of the impact on prices. I mean, the impact in the US is quite clear, but that gas is not being exported. What's your view on the long-term impact of the shale?
So I think, when we build up the cost curve for European gas supply, shale gas, there is, of course, uncertainty about what it's going to cost in Europe, but there's no reason to think it will be the same cost as in the US. It's probably somewhat more expensive, and people have different views about how much more expensive. But we think it clearly comes in to the left of imported LNG in Europe, and the amount of imported LNG that's required in Europe is reasonably limited in the long term because there's quite a lot of pipe supply coming in alongside domestic. So the one way that it could have some impact, have a significant impact, is if it was to push out that imported LNG, or push it to a sort of minimal level where it's maybe in locations where we absolutely need it because there's transmission constraints, but the core of Europe doesn't particularly import LNG. Now that's a significant benefit if you see LNG prices staying at their current sort of $16, $18 an MMBTU level, and we can get gas from pipe suppliers at $11 or $12 an MMBTU. It could shift the price setter back to being more like Russia or other pipe suppliers. But to see it going dramatically further than that is just really hard to see. I mean, with numbers, as we said, of 50 BCM, more likely in the 10 to 30 BCM of supply, it pushes the cost curve along a little bit, but it doesn't fundamentally change the price setter in most cases. So we think it'll probably push it down. We don't think it'll bring European prices anywhere close to North American gas prices within, I'm only talking out to 2030, and beyond that it's anyone's guess.